You are listening to Disclosure Radio from the good people at the Voice of Prophecy. My name is Sean Boonstra. I am going to be your host for the next 57 minutes and 13 seconds, unless we take some of the commercial time out. But I don't want you to change the dial because we've got a fascinating topic today. And my co-host is the lovely, the talented, the beautiful, my girlfriend of 28 years. Yeah, 28 years. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, we're old.
Like this past September of 2017 marked 28 years since I first took you to Ming's Restaurant in Victoria, British Columbia.
That's right.
I wonder if they're still in business or if they
You
burned the
know,
place down after I ate there.
I don't know. We saw it last time we were up there, but I just can't recall if it was open or if it was an old sign or just what. Yeah.
You dumped your water on me.
I didn't dump it on you. I dumped it all over the table.
Yeah, you were so nervous because, I mean, look at me.
I know.
Yeah, I was
you were nervous
I was
too.
such a handsome young man, and I was nervous too. I actually got in an accident on the way to pick you up. And then remember when we were driving to our first date, the light was like turned green and I didn't pay attention because I was mostly staring at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's 28 years later and you're still my girlfriend. And we've been married for like a million years.
Wow. This
it's 24
fall is
years,
24
right?
years.
24 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 25th, you need to take me somewhere special.
No.
No?
No,
Not at all?
that's expensive. Unless people send in a lot of donations, we're not going anywhere. No, in all seriousness, your donations would never go for a holiday. Your donations just go to keep the gospel on the airwaves. Okay, I'll tell you what. I will take you somewhere very, very special.
Okay.
And I'll take you out for dinner, and there might even be a toy that comes with the meal.
Oh, a really fancy dinner.
Yeah, really fancy, really fancy. And there's a toy, and the meal comes in a bag, and you get fries and a drink with it.
Oh,
yeah.
Super, super fancy.
Now, given that I'm a vegetarian, I don't know what we're going to get that comes in a bag with fries and a toy.
Yeah, grilled cheese sandwich.
I don't eat cheese.
I
don't even eat
so
cheese.
We're in trouble.
Hey, you know, one of the things I've noticed over the last 28 years is that you always win Name That Tune. If you've heard a song once in your whole life, you remember it the rest of your life. You know all the lyrics. It's like you have this computer in your head from the 1980s. You remember everything that's ever happened. So we're going to play Name That Tune.
Okay.
And, well, we're not. They're waving at me. Are you kidding? There it is. We got our internet connection back. The guys in the booth, they were really nervous because they knew I was going to fire them. Now listen to this tune. It's back. It's back. Listen to this tune, Gene. Do you know what this is?
Instantly.
What is it? What is it?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You got it first try.
Yeah,
I would have said
of
Superman,
course.
but yeah, it's Raiders of the.
I can
do you know why?
The hat instantly.
The hat and the whip and Indiana Jones. Do you know why we played that today?
I do know.
Not because we're promoting the movie. The movie's very old.
But it does, when you hear that music, it kind of makes you think about archaeology.
Right.
And
but what are they looking
from
for
the Bible.
in Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost?
The Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant. That's our topic today. Ding, 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 ding. If I had a bell, I would ring it and you would win a prize.
Oh.
Yeah, you got it. Ark of the Covenant. If you want to believe in Indiana Jones, you'd come to the conclusion that the Ark of the Covenant is some kind of magical box, an occult thing, and when you open it, it melts Nazis. Do you remember that? They open the box. I'm not promoting taking your kids to the movies, folks, but this was my past life.
This is part of our childhood.
Yeah, it is. And so you open the box and it melts Nazis, and that's what Indiana Jones would have you believe. It's some kind of magical box from the distant past that if you find it, you can bring the Nazi empire to its knees.
But, of course, in reality does not always,
in reality,
almost never matches what we see in the movies. In reality, the Ark of the Covenant was something quite different.
Yeah, quite different. It was a sacred object. You find it in the Old Testament, used by the Hebrews, and it's used in the sanctuary service. The first place that you find the Ark of the Covenant mentioned is in Exodus 25, and this is when Moses is starting to build the tabernacle, the first sanctuary service sort of in the wilderness. They used a portable tabernacle before they built the temple in Jerusalem. And it's the very first thing that God tells him to build. This is number one in the list. And it's a small chest, just a few feet long and you know, a little bit wide. It's, say, about the size of a modern-day hope chest. You know, I don't think ladies do hope chests anymore.
Not
no,
so
you
much.
have one.
I do have one.
It's about that size.
It was my grandmother's.
Say a large toy chest or something like that. And it's made of acacia wood and it's covered with gold. It has three things inside of it. You know what was inside the Ark of the Covenant?
Well, there were three things inside. There
Right.
was the copy of the Ten Commandments.
That's exactly right.
That was carried down on stone. Then, of course, there was Aaron's rod. Remember, it budded miraculously,
Yep.
that rod.
Yep.
And then, of course, there was also something symbolic, a pot of manna.
That's correct. Those three things were in the ark. So it's a wooden chest. It's overlaid with gold. And as the children of Israel traveled across the desert, they were literally following a cloud, right?
Yes.
A pillar of cloud by day and a
pillar of fire at night.
pillar of
'Cause you
fire
couldn't
at
see
night.
the cloud at night.
And fire, of course, in the Bible is often representative of the presence of God. In
Yes.
1 Corinthians 4, Paul says that cloud was actually Christ following them. This is a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ before he's born as a human being. So the priests would carry the ark. They never touched the ark itself. They had it on rods. And when the cloud stopped moving, they would pitch camp. And the ark would go in the most holy place in the tabernacle behind a veil. And then the cloud would descend. I'm making gestures, even though this is radio.
Well,
although there are cameras.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you would like to watch, you can do that at disclosuradio.com.
You can see me gesturing.
You
That
can
the cloud would
you can
come
see
down.
Sean
The
gesturing.
cloud would come down out of the sky, and it would go into the most holy place, and it would take up residence above the Ark of the Covenant. So, the Ark of the Covenant is made during the Exodus from Egypt, and eventually, when they build the temple in Jerusalem, Solomon's temple, they move it in there. Then the temple is ransacked by the Babylonians. Nebuchadnezzar comes because of the sins of Judah. It's the southern tribes at this point. The northern tribes are already taken captive by the Assyrians. The temple is ransacked by the Babylonians. Jeremiah predicted it. It happened because of the wickedness of the kings. And at this point in the Bible narrative, the Ark of the Covenant goes missing.
Yeah.
There's a list of everything the Babylonians took with them, and there's no mention of the Ark in that list.
Yeah, it's just silent,
absent. It doesn't go to Babylon.
Right.
Now, in these ancient cultures, if they captured the most holy object in Israel, the big thing, the big deal, we have the Ark of the Covenant, they would have bragged about it, but they're silent. They don't have it. Then, after the captivity, 70 years of captivity, the Jews come back to Jerusalem. They rebuild the city, they rebuild the temple, they build a second temple, and as they're furnishing the second temple, there is no mention of the Ark of the Covenant. It's missing, and it's a big deflating, episode in the history of Israel. What's happened is, when they dedicate the first temple, Solomon falls on his face. You read it in the Chronicles, and he falls on his face, and the cloud comes down, and the presence of God fills the temple. There's a huge, huge display of divine glory, but with the second temple, there is absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So it is gone. Yet Haggai predicted that the glory of the second temple would be greater than the glory of the first. Where is it? Haggai 2.
Important reason.
Yeah, Haggai 2, verse 9. The glory of this latter temple shall be greater than the former, and in this place I will give peace. Now you got to ask, the presence of God didn't show up when they rebuilt the temple and they dedicated it, not like the first time. And here's Haggai the prophet saying, this place is going to be greater than the first.
Well, for a very important reason, because, of course, it was the second temple that Jesus spoke in, where he was dedicated by his parents.
Right, and he shows up there in purpose.
Yes.
So we are in person rather. So what we know is that out in the wilderness, Paul says Jesus was in that cloud following the children of Israel, and then he actually steps in person. He becomes one of us. He comes out from behind the veil, from out of the most holy place, and he walks among us out in the courtyard.
Beautiful.
With the rest of us. So it actually becomes more special because God draws even closer to us. There was a barrier between sinners and a holy God, and that barrier goes down when Jesus appears in the temple. But the Ark of the Covenant has been missing since the sack of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. We don't know, there's no more record of it.
So it's not mentioned in that account. It's not mentioned in following accounts. So Sean, what did happen to the Ark? Do we know where it is?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people insist that they know exactly where it is, and there are a lot of theories out there. I've got a little collection in my library. There's like almost an entire shelf on theories on where the Ark of the Covenant went, and I thought what we'd do today, let's look at some of those. There are some fascinating stories. So, theory number 1.
All right.
I wish we could get a drum roll or some kind of, when I say theory number 1, there should be like reverb or something. So it's theory number 1, 1, 1, 1. So it's really
maybe
impressive.
Maybe they can do that for you.
Well, maybe you guys
room.
can fix that in post. I want to sound like an announcer in the sky when I talk about these things. Theory number one. Here it goes. A group in Ethiopia known as the Falashas. The outsiders call them Falashas, and Falasha means outsiders. They call themselves Beta Israel, the house of Israel. There is a group in Ethiopia known as the Falashas that say they have the ark safely stored in a structure in the town of Aksum. In the town of Aksum. They say they have it, which blows people's minds.
To this day,
right.
In this town. Okay.
Yeah, and Ethiopia is in Africa, south of Egypt.
Right.
It's a long ways from home. How in the world would they claim that the Ark of the Covenant goes to the country of Ethiopia?
Right.
Well, here's the story.
All right.
The story says that they got the Ark of the Covenant almost 3,000 years ago, well before Nebuchadnezzar comes and burns down the city and takes everybody captive. And they say that they have had it since that time, 3,000 years ago. It's guarded in a special building. It's guarded by a group of virgin monks. They have never been married. They have never been with a woman. And they have remained. There's been this long succession of this group of special monks. It almost sounds like the Vestal Virgins in Rome.
Yeah, true.
That they have been guarding it, and they may never, ever, once you become a part of this group guarding the ark, you may never leave the chapel grounds again until the day you die. You are attached to this.
So how do they guard this chapel area from
mostly
people
because it's so
wandering on
remote
and
that
off?
nobody goes there.
Okay.
I mean, if you were to show up with an army, I don't know what they would do.
Yeah.
This chapel is on an island.
Ah.
It's restricted to just men. You may never visit, and I may. It's one of my privileges as a male. I can go to Aksum and see this building.
Okay.
And no women may ever step on the island. You know why?
I suppose they would be distracting potentially to these monks.
Yeah, the monks, they're going to see these girls and forget their job of guarding the ark and fall in love, and that'll be the end of everything. It's frankly the end of everything when men fall in love anyway, right? I mean,
the end of bachelorhood,
you've been
the
distracting,
beginning of everything else.
I don't know. You've been distracting me for 28 years. I can't even remember what I was going to do with my life before the day you showed up. That's what they're worried about in Ethiopia. These monks are going to go, what is that? I mean, here we are, this group of men, and somebody beautiful shows up, and they'll be distracted. So no women allowed. Now, the ark, they say, is on this island, hasn't always been there. They actually had to hide it somewhere else during a time of war for 400 years. But outside of that 400 years, the 4th century period, they say it's been in Aksum.
Okay.
So the big question,
how did it get there?
How does it get there? Well, I'm looking at the clock. I think we should create a cliffhanger.
Okay.
I think we should, because like any minute now, Harim is going to reach for the board and he's going to start the music any minute now. And that means that I'm going to be out of time. So yes, this group, the Falashas, they call themselves Beta Israel. They claim they have the ark down there in Ethiopia. And the big question is, they say they've had it for 3,000 years. The big question is, how in the world do you get the Ark of the Covenant? I mean, you just can't walk away with the Ark of the Covenant. It's the most holy object in all the Bible.
There's got to be
a story. It
represents
represents the throne of God. There is an amazing story.
Okay.
Whether or not it's true, we will determine today. But it is one of the most fascinating stories I've ever read. So after the break, we'll come to that. If you're listening, what I want you to do, well, if you're listening, you heard what I just said, right? But if you're listening, if you're out there, I want you to grab a pen and paper, because there is an astonishing offer coming to you right now from the good people at the Voice of Prophecy, an opportunity to study all the major themes of the Bible in one of our comprehensive, free-to-you Bible courses. You're going to want to write that down, and then in a few seconds, I'm going to come back with Gene, and we're going to discuss how it is that the Falashas claim they've got the Ark of the Covenant.
Are you searching for answers to life's toughest questions like, where is God when we suffer? Can I find real happiness? Or is there any hope for our chaotic world? The Discover Bible Guides will help you find the answers you're looking for. Visit us at BibleStudies.com or give us a call at 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides. Study online on our secure website or have the free guides mailed right to your home. There is never a cost or obligation. The Discover Bible Guides are our free gift to you. Find answers in guides like, Does My Life Really Matter to God? And A Second Chance at Life. You'll find answers to the things that matter most to you in each of the 26 Discover Bible Guides. Visit BibleStudies.com and begin your journey today to discover answers to life's deepest questions.
from the break. We had just enough time during that break for my wife and I to get into an argument about who's going to pick our daughter up next Wednesday.
Yeah, that's real life, isn't it?
That's real life.
Yes.
So you go off the air, you have a fight with your wife, and we're still married.
It was
we worked it all
more
out.
of a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, it was more of a discussion, and I was right.
You were right. No, you had forgotten. That's what happened.
Yeah, but, well. All right, Ark of the Covenant. Ark of the Covenant. We were talking about the fact that there's a group in Ethiopia in the town of Aksum who believe that they have the Ark of the Covenant. And the question we promised to answer was, how do they claim that they got it? Well,
yeah, Sean, there must be a story behind that,
Oh,
because
there's a
this
great
sacred object taken from the first temple, it doesn't just
how does it get there?
vanish. How does it get
There's
there?
a very old book known as the Kebra Nagast. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maybe it's the Kebra Nagast, the Kebra Nagast. It literally means the glory of the kings.
Okay.
Now, that old book is actually a 14th century document. So it's not all that old. It dates back to the time of like Huss and Tyndall and so on in Europe. And most scholars think this book was written to establish the right of a certain Ethiopian dignitary's descendants to be the rulers of Ethiopia forever.
Okay.
And believers in Ethiopia say that this document, the Kebra Nagast, is copied from much earlier Coptic documents dating all the way back to the 4th century, so like all the way back to the time of Constantine. And they say those documents in Constantine's time were probably copied from even earlier documents that date well before Christ. Now, Coptic, in case you're not familiar with what that is, the Coptics are a branch of Christianity in Egypt. They predate both Catholics and Protestants. It's a very ancient form of Christianity.
Okay.
So that book, which they claim is a copy of a copy,
Right.
that dates way before Christ, tells this remarkable story.
Okay.
This book says the Queen of Sheba, who's from Ethiopia, travels to Jerusalem to go and see King Solomon because she's heard how amazingly wise and smart and talented and wealthy he is.
Well, at least part of that is accurate because we have a biblical account of her visiting Solomon.
Yeah, we do, right? 1 Kings chapter 10 says she heard about him and I want to go. And she's so impressed with how exquisite he is that she brings presents, gives him gold, spices, precious stones. But according to the Kebra Nagast or Nagast, Solomon also gives her a gift.
Okay.
How do I put this delicately? According to the Ethiopian story, this isn't in the Bible, she goes home pregnant.
Oh,
yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah, Solomon, we do know, had an appetite for the ladies.
Sure, he had several wives and concubines.
Several. He had 1,000 wives. So apparently, he and the Queen of Sheba became close.
Intimate?
Yeah.
Should
how do
we
I
say that?
Intimate.
Okay.
According to this story, and they give birth to a son, and the boy's name is Menelik.
All right.
Or Menelik. I'm not sure how to pronounce this because I don't speak Coptic and I don't speak, the language of the philosophers. So we'll just call him Menelik.
Okay.
So Menelik grows up in Ethiopia. He's the son of the queen. And when he's 22 years old, he wants to meet his dad. So back he goes to Jerusalem to visit his father. And on his way back from that visit, when he's coming all the way back down to Ethiopia, there's a group of Israelite nobles, a bunch of first sons from these different families, these noble families, firstborn sons, and they travel with him. But without Menelik knowing it, these boys have stolen the Ark of the Covenant. Some versions say they left a duplicate behind so they wouldn't be discovered. They steal the Ark of the Covenant and they take it to Ethiopia.
Okay.
When he gets home, he discovers what they've done. And Menelik is freaking out because this is a dangerous thing to do. You do not steal the Ark of the Covenant. Right? The Philistines took it in 1 Samuel 5, and they put it in the house of their god. They took it to Ashdod and put it in the house of Dagon, and they got cancerous tumors.
Right. Didn't turn out well.
No, not at all. So, and other people who presumptuously touch it, like 1 Samuel 6, Uzzah touches the Ark when they're taking it back from the Philistines. He dies.
He dies, and it was an unintentional thing even.
Yeah.
And he drops dead.
Right. He just reaches to stabilize it and he drops dead. So when Menelik discovers it, I don't know where he discovers it, opens the drapes, there it is. He freaks out. Oh, we've got the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
But then nothing bad happens. No cancerous tumors, nobody dies. And so he starts to reason, maybe God wants me to have this here for some reason. So, based on that story, the Ethiopians claim 1,000 years of Jewish belief. They became Jews. And, they had the Ark of the Covenant. They adopt this belief system of Solomon. And they're Jews all the way up to the time of Christ. Okay. And then they become Christians. Some versions say that the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8 is studying Isaiah's gospel because he's got Jewish roots. And he becomes a Christian and perhaps brings back the faith to Ethiopia. That's one version of how these people become Christians.
Okay.
But there's another one. There's this king of Ethiopia, King Izana, and he converts to Christianity around 330 A.D. So within 20 years of Constantine converting to Christianity up in the city of Rome, or supposedly. And we think, some studies say that King Izana actually became a Christian when a Christian merchant came through that way. A Syriac Christian, which was a different ancient branch of Christianity, came down through the Red Sea area and visited Ethiopia and so on. But we know he converts in the 300s, and he brings the ark out of hiding and brings it to the village of Axum, because he's the one who, it had been hidden for 400 years of warfare. And at this point in his life, they have coins in Ethiopia, and they're all changed. During the reign of King Izana, they take the sun and the moon off their coins, and they put a cross on it. So there's a conversion of a king. And they say that's perhaps how the Ethiopians went from Judaism to Christianity. So we've got this group, the Falashas. They're Ethiopian Jews, and then they're Ethiopian Christians, and they're fascinating. According to the Patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which has about 40 million members.
Large.
Yeah, it's huge, right? And there are Ethiopian Orthodox churches all over the world. The bulk of those members live in Ethiopia. But these Ethiopian Christians still follow the dietary laws of the Bible. They won't eat pork, for example. They still practice circumcision.
Okay.
They still use Old Testament names for their boys. If you go there, there's going to be Isaacs and Abrahams and Jacobs.
Ebenezer's.
Right.
Yeah.
And outside of the cities, not in the big cities, but in the countryside, most of these Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, according to the Patriarch of the Church, are still observing the seventh-day Sabbath. They keep it on Saturday, Friday night sundown to Saturday night sundown. In the urban centers, they quit keeping the Sabbath because Rome, they petitioned Rome when Muslims were attacking the city in the 1500s, and Rome said, you'll have to change a day of worship if we're going to help you, and they wanted them to keep Sunday instead. And so in the cities they changed, but in the countries they still keep the Sabbath. So it's a fascinating bunch of Christians. And today they're surrounded, obviously, by Muslim countries. And in spite of that, this is one stronghold of Christianity in Africa, in North Africa. About half the country of Ethiopia is still Christian to this day. Yeah. And they claim they've got the ark because Menelik and his friends took it from Jerusalem.
So interesting. The story is fascinating. The history, rich. But I guess the big question, do they really have the ark?
Yeah, well, they think they do. Of course, nobody's allowed inside to see it except for the Grand Poobah. That's not his name. He's the guardian of the ark. Please forgive me if you're Ethiopian Orthodox. I shouldn't have called him the Grand Poobah. But the guy in charge of the ark's the only one who can ever see it. The rest of the monks never lay eyes on it. They think they have it. Some people think they have it. But personally, now here comes Boonster's private opinion, I doubt it.
Okay.
I doubt it. The Falashas call it the Tabota, or the Tabota Zion.
Which means?
The Ark of Zion.
Ah.
And they still claim they have it. I mean, even the leader of the church can't see it, so we have to take their word on it. But the belief that they have it is very widespread in Ethiopia, to the point where every church in Ethiopia, every Orthodox church, has a tablet. They have a replica of the ark with the 10 Commandments in it. And once a year, they parade that around January, middle of January roughly, at the Feast of Timkat, or the Epiphany. They take these tablets, these arks, from the church all over Ethiopia. They're paraded through the street. People dance in front of it. They fall on the ground before it. They prostrate themselves before it. Even these models of it, because they're absolutely convinced. And they even have these great stories that say, oh, God has favored us so much, we must have the ark. Mary and Jesus, during their exile, weren't always in Egypt. They actually came here, and they'll show you the bench that Mary and Jesus used to sit on. And
all the way to Ethiopia.
All the way to Ethiopia.
Okay.
Right. But do they have it? I don't think so. Here's why.
Okay.
Here's why. Here's a passage that takes place long after Solomon, long after the Queen of Sheba, long after Menelik.
Okay.
It's in 2 Chronicles 35. This is long afterwards. Now Josiah, verse 1, this is 2 Chronicles 35. Josiah kept a Passover to the Lord in Jerusalem, and they slaughtered the Passover lambs on the 14th day of the first month. That's standard, right? They're celebrating the Passover. And he set, verse 2, the priests in their duties and encouraged them for the service of the house of the Lord. Then he said to the Levites who taught all Israel, who were holy to the Lord, put the what?
Holy Ark.
Put the holy ark in the house which Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, built. It shall no longer be a burden on your shoulders. So the ark was not being kept in the temple. And Josiah says, move it into the temple. This is long. The Bible says point blank, the ark is still in Jerusalem many years after Solomon, many years after Menelik is born, many years after Menelik supposedly goes back to Jerusalem. Of course, true believers will say that what Josiah had was a replica, but there's nothing in the Bible to indicate that. So I don't think they have it. I honestly don't. And if they want to prove it, let us inside, take a peek. But I don't think they have it. That's probably one of the biggest theories in the world is that the Falashas have this thing in Ethiopia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now, there are other theories
you
said as
well?
well?
Other theories. Here comes theory number 2.
All
I need my
right.
big resonant theory number 2. Ready?
Yeah.
This one would make all the Dan Brown fans happy, right? The Da Vinci Code fans.
Okay.
Book is absolute garbage. It's sold as fiction for a reason. It's junk.
It is fiction.
But here's theory number 2, and the Dan Brown fans are going to love this. They say that the Templars, the Knights Templar, have the ark and they took it. Okay. In the 12th century, there were 9 knights. There were crusaders who pitched camp. They set up shop in Jerusalem, up on the Temple Mount. They decided to live on the old Temple Mount where the Second Temple had been until it was destroyed by the Romans. And the Templars are kind of a mysterious bunch. Everybody's got stories about the Templars, right? They're shrouded in legend for the last 1,000 years. They came to be known as the poor fellow soldiers of Jesus Christ in the Temple of Solomon. That was their name.
Okay.
Templar is short for that, the poor fellow soldiers of Jesus Christ in the Temple of Solomon. And Templars, people, if you ever saw that show as a kid, The Saint, remember that British detective show? His name was Simon Templar because his family was supposedly they built a whole secret agent show out of this. They're so mysterious that it's like a secret society.
Okay.
Now, they were ambitious builders. And after about the year 1170 AD, they built 80 cathedrals and 50 abbeys, or homes for monks, all around Europe. And some conspiracy theorists suggest that they got all their building secrets and their design secrets, they're based on geometrical patterns and so on. They learned them from Solomon's Temple and the Temple Mount.
Interesting.
Now, the story goes that they start digging around in the caverns that are under the Temple Mount, and inside the Temple Mount, they find the Ark of the Covenant. And they took it. They took it to Scotland. Some people say it's hidden in Roslin Chapel, which they say is supposedly a scaled-down replica of Solomon's Temple. It's behind a wall in the basement, they say, or maybe buried beneath the chapel. So is it true? Did the Templars take it? Is that feasible? I guess anything's feasible. I personally doubt it. I don't think the Ark of the Covenant is hidden in Roslin Chapel. I don't think the Templars took it. Okay. Is it feasible?
Maybe.
Sure. So that's theory number 2. The Templars took it. We've got the Ethiopians, theory number 1. We've got the Knights Templar, that mysterious secret organization. They took it to Scotland. And there are still 2 more theories that we can examine.
All right.
Where did the Ark of the Covenant go? Yeah, after the break, we'll get closer to the truth. And I'll give you theory number 3. My name is Sean Boonstra. You're listening to Disclosure. We're discussing the missing Ark of the Covenant. And we'll be right back. Creation. Evolution. Where did the world come from? Where did you come from? Were you created in an instant? Did you evolve from another animal or life species? These are issues that are discussed in classrooms, textbooks, and sometimes around your break table at work, when the conversation suddenly turns serious. These kinds of questions are answered in our free Discover Bible Guides. These 26 beautifully illustrated guides cover all the major themes of the Bible, and they answer some of the hardest questions of life. You can get your free copy just for the asking by contacting me. Go to VOP.com and click on the tab that says Study. That's VOP.com, the tab that says Study, or phone me, 888-456-7933. That's 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides, available just for the asking. That was such a long and luxurious break that I had time to trim my toenails and get a little neck massage grooming. And personal grooming. I'd go brush my teeth and comb my hair and shine up my glasses. But in reality, this is the back half of a show where we are talking about the missing Ark of the Covenant. Where is it? And we've looked at a couple of theories already that are really popular theories.
Some interesting theories, Sean. Of course, the first one you shared is that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
That it's been there since Bible times.
Right.
Fascinating.
Right, the Philoshes, right?
The Philoshes.
Beta Israel is what they call themselves, the House of Israel. As a matter of fact, after 1948, I believe, a lot of them were immigrated to Israel, where they received Israelite citizenship because they really were practicing Jews. It's fascinating,
Yeah. So there's interesting story there. There's interesting history there.
Right.
Another theory, the Knights Templar.
Right.
And they actually took the Ark of the Covenant, and it is in Scotland,
Right.
being protected there. Another very interesting theory.
Right. They built all these structures all around Europe, and Rosslyn Chapel, people claim, is built on the proportions of Solomon's Temple, and it's a scaled-down version. I don't see it so much, but yeah, they say maybe it's buried in the basement or behind the basement wall. And those are your people.
Right.
You're part Scottish, so your
Yes,
people may have
that's true.
stolen the Ark of the Covenant.
Well, yeah, it's entirely possible.
Do you have
my
it?
barbarian ancestors?
Yeah, maybe it's hidden in our
entirely
basement.
Possible. I don't think so.
No, I'm pretty sure
no.
it isn't. So those
are two popular theories. Share with us the third.
Theory number 3.
Okay,
Yeah,
here we go.
I wanted to make such grand entrances on that, but those guys aren't doing it for me. I wanted reverb. Theory number 3. Three. Yeah. All right, we're going to go to the same part of the world. Your people are from Scotland. The next theory says the Ark is actually in Ireland.
Not so far away.
Diddly-dee, we've got the Ark.
Okay.
How was that? That was pretty good, right? I have an
That
Irish
was-
first name.
Yeah, and you can do a good Irish accent. You once spent an entire day talking in an Irish accent.
Well,
I wouldn't recommend it for disclosure. No,
No,
don't
I
go
was like,
there.
I do talk like a pirate day and talk like a Celt day.
Yeah.
So this one's a little more obscure, and frankly, this is new to me. I only learned this in the last year or so.
Okay.
It's rooted in a really odd Christian movement that I am familiar with. I've known about them for 25, 30 years. Many of you will have come across it out there. It's the Anglo-Israel theory, or the British Israelite theory.
Yeah, I've heard of that as well.
This is a theory that says the 10 tribes from the north who were taken into captivity by the Assyrians, this is before, Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon,
Right.
that the 10 northern tribes, there was a civil war, there was a split in Israel over the issue of taxation and some other things, and that the 10 northern tribes were taken captive by the Assyrians in the 700s and never came back. The British Israelites believed that they became the nations of Europe, lived in the Caucasus Mountains, became the Caucasians, and all the nations of Europe are sort of the descendants of these 10 tribes. Now, before we go any further with this, and I know I'm going to get letters. I know I'm going to get letters because I always do, but it's junk history. It's not true.
No, it doesn't add up.
Right? The 10 tribes went into Assyria into slavery. And even though the 2 remaining tribes went to Babylon, Babylon was Assyria. They absorbed all of Assyria. Nineveh and Babylon were really close cities. It's Nineveh the Great at 700 BC, Babylon the Great at 600 BC. Babylon absorbs the Assyrians. They conquer them. They take all their lands. They take all the people who live in those lands, and they inherit these captives from northern Israel. So now the 10 tribes are also under Babylonian rule, and when the exile ends, they all come back. There are statements in 5 different places in the Bible that the 12 tribes all rejoined in exile. And God says that after the exile, they become Israel together. Nehemiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, Ezra, Jeremiah. Ezekiel 37 Ezekiel takes 2 sticks, and he writes on one stick Judah and the other one Israel, and says they'll become one. Daniel uses the term Israel, Jew, and Judah, those terms interchangeably. Israel came back to exile, and when they come back from exile, they offer a sacrifice for each of the 12 tribes that are there in the city of Jerusalem. It's junk. Don't even waste time writing me a letter. It's absolute junk. I mean, and they play these games with etymology, saying, oh, the Saxons, those are actually Isaac's sons. That's where that word comes from. And the Stone of Scone under
That's
Westminster, the chair in Westminster Abbey where the Queen of England is.
Right.
They say that's Jacob's pillow. It's up there in
Right.
England. And that Elizabeth actually means the house of Elijah, Beth being Hebrew. There are no etymological commonalities between the Germanic Anglo-Frisian languages. and Hebrew. Anyway, but let's get back to the ark, because there is a theory that goes hand in hand with this.
Okay.
The British Israel folks are eager to tie the people of the Bible to the British Isles. It's a deep burden that they have to prove that they are one of the 10 tribes.
To legitimate it, yeah.
And so they took an old book, the Book of Tephi, and I have a copy of the Book of Tephi. It's kind of a nice name. Here, that was me thudding it on the table. I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see it. I found my very own copy of the Book of Tephi. It's the song of a Celtic bard. It's an old poem about this Queen Tephi. And these British Israel folks painstakingly dissect this poem to make it a story about Jeremiah and his secretary Baruch.
Okay.
Baruch is his secretary.
Right.
And they say that this Book of Tephi is really about taking the ark to Ireland. That Jeremiah went to Ireland, Baruch doesn't make it, he dies halfway there, and so on. The story goes like this. They claim that Jeremiah first takes the ark to Egypt. Why? Because in Jeremiah 44, God tells Jeremiah to warn the Jews who are living down in Egypt that they will not be safe from Nebuchadnezzar just because they're far away. Now, some people take that to mean that Jeremiah himself was actually living there at some point in Egypt. Jeremiah 44 mentions the city of Tahpanhes. It's an Egyptian city. They take that to be the city of Tanis, which is mentioned in the Book of Tephi. So they have to play games. It doesn't say Tahpanhes in the Book of Tephi. They changed it to Tanis, and they say, well, that's equivalent.
Okay.
The theory says Jeremiah took the ark to Egypt to protect it when Nebuchadnezzar would come, and that's the whole reason the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie starts in Egypt. It's based on that old story. The producers apparently knew it. So where does Jeremiah go next? How does the ark get to Ireland? Or So the theory next goes to Nostradamus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, next place they go. That's your first big, alarm bell. If they need Nostradamus to prove this theory, it's junk. You don't go to psychics to determine the will of God. But they say that Nostradamus got a message from God, and that Nostradamus predicted the ark would be found again. And so they got all excited about this, the British Israel folks. Where would it be found again? Well, in the 18th century, late toward the end of the 1700s, somebody dug up a burial cairn of someone named Olam Fodla. I know I'm butchering that in Celtic.
Fodla.
Yeah,
Okay.
in Ireland. Burial cairns are these mounds of rock. Our team was there a while ago, and we found Maeve's tomb up off Sligo. We had to climb a mountain, and there's this massive pile of rocks for old Queen Maeve, about 5,000 years old, they think. But Olam Fodla is a burial cairn, and that's the name of the person who's inside. And what these people claim is that Olam Fodla is actually a Hebrew title and a Celtic title all at once, and they say Olam Fodla is actually Jeremiah. That's his tomb there in Ireland.
Okay.
Right? There's still some splaining to do.
Sure.
Right? How does he get there? Well, inside the tomb, they found 30 stones with hieroglyphics in them, these symbols, squiggles and slashes and marks and a spiral. And they say one of those inscriptions proves it was Jeremiah, because they claim the inscriptions describe a boat journey on a Tyrian boat, people from Tyre and Sidon, probably Phoenician sailors. A Tyrian boat journey that leaves Tahpanhes in Egypt and goes to Gibraltar with 5 people on board. Then from there, another boat goes onward to Ireland, and in 583 BC lands in the Emerald Isle, and these people have gone from Egypt to Ireland. The 5 passengers, they claim, now remember, they're getting this all out of squiggles on a rock.
Out of hieroglyphics, yeah.
They're barely even that. I mean, if you see them, they're squiggles.
Okay.
The passengers are Jeremiah, they claim, Baruch, his secretary, the daughter of Zedekiah, whom they claim is Tephi, and 2 of her handmaidens. 3 people die on the journey. Baruch dies, but Tephi and Jeremiah make it to Ireland. At Gibraltar, they change ships. It's a Greek ship, but again, it's all based on a bunch of squiggly lines. And they say there's a spiral in there, and there is a spiral. They say spiral. That's the traditional symbol of Ireland, so this is telling us they all went to Ireland. Well,
quite a stretch.
Yeah, well, maybe. The tomb is in Ireland.
Right.
And the spiral's on a rock in Ireland. Could it represent Ireland? Yeah, but
probably.
Jeremiah's name's not there.
Okay.
But based on this, some say that the ark is actually buried somewhere in Ireland, probably at the hill of Tara. Now, Tara is the traditional location for the home of
the Irish High King.
The Irish High King,
right.
famous spot.
Yeah.
So some people get really, really, really excited. And in 1899, A group from the Anglo-Israel Association goes looking for the ark because they say Terah sounds like Torah, and this must be the hill of the Torah. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's the hill of the Torah.
Sounds alike.
Well, yeah, but
I'll give them that.
Yeah, they love to do that. There's
Sure.
no linguistic connection between Semitic and Germanic languages, but they
Yeah.
still insist that Torah is Terah and Terah is Torah. So what do? They go digging up around Terah, the ancestral home of the Irish High Kings.
Right.
And this really irritates people. Even William Butler Yeats, the famous... Hey, I saw his grave. Do you know that?
Did you?
I
When
found
you were
out
in
it was a couple
Ireland?
miles from my
Oh.
hotel, and I walked over and saw his grave.
Very
and it has
cool.
has a little poem on it. And yeah.
I would expect it would have a poem on
Yeah,
it.
I would have a poem on it. But he gets upset. These people are digging up the hill of Terah looking for the Ark of the Covenant. What do you think the odds
Destroying
are that they
history.
actually found it?
I would guess 0.
0. Absolutely
Yeah.
0. They didn't find it. But there
Wow.
you go.
So that's
Theory
our
number 3.
third theory.
Yep.
So theory number 1, it's in Ethiopia. Theory number 2 in Scotland. Theory number 3, Ireland.
Yep.
Are there more theories?
Yep. Theory number 4.
Okay.
This one is actually the most likely. This is what I actually think may be true.
Okay.
Is probably true. And that's that the Ark of the Covenant is actually hidden somewhere in Israel.
Well, that seems to line up with the passage we read earlier in Chronicles, doesn't it? 2 Chronicles.
Well, but it disappears after that point. Don't forget,
Okay.
it still
So
has to
you're
go
talking
missing in that
post that.
passage. Right, but it's hidden somewhere in Israel because that's why it was missing and the Babylonians didn't get it.
Okay.
Now, some people say it's hidden somewhere in the city of Jerusalem. Some people say it's hidden somewhere else, like Mount Nebo. Remember Mount Nebo? That's where Moses was taken up. He found out he wasn't going to get to go into the promised land.
Right.
And the Lord takes him up on Mount Nebo and shows him the promised land from up there. Some people say that the ark is hidden on that mountain, or others say it's hidden in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, something like that. And the theory suggests it still involves Jeremiah, and they say that Jeremiah probably hid the ark when he realized the Babylonians were coming. He did the one thing: I want to preserve the ark. It's the
That makes good sense.
yeah, the ark represents the throne of God, and I want to hide the ark. I want to make sure that it's safe, and so he hides it. So that's probably where the Anglo-Israelites got the idea that Jeremiah had something to do with it, because there are old stories. After the break, we'll look at one of those old stories. There's a version of this recorded in the books of the Maccabees. Those are deuterocanonical books or apocryphal books. They're not included in the scriptures, but it's ancient history.
Good history.
Yeah, and the book of 2 Maccabees seems to claim that Jeremiah hid the ark. What we'll do after the break is take a look at that. But you notice everybody wants to tie it to Jeremiah because Jeremiah is the prophet who is prophesying at the time that Nebuchadnezzar sacks Jerusalem.
Yeah, historically it fits.
Yeah, and at some point before Nebuchadnezzar sacks Jerusalem, the ark just goes missing. It's not mentioned, it disappears. And so did Jeremiah hide it? I think he did. I actually think theory number 4 is probably correct, and I'll give you a little bit of evidence to think on after the break. But I do hear the music, which means it's time to offer our Discover Bible School. Hopefully not with the version where my voice squeaks halfway through the commercial. But it's time for the Discover Bible School. Get a pen and paper. You want to write this down. We have one of the best Bible courses on the planet that's free to you. You can study all the major themes in the Bible in the comfort of your home just for the asking. And I'll be right back after this.
Are you searching for answers to life's toughest questions? Like, where is God when we suffer? Can I find real happiness? Does my life really matter to God? Or is there any hope for our chaotic world? The Discover Bible Guides will help you find the answers that you're looking for. Visit us at BibleStudies.com or give us a call at 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides. Study online on our secure website or have the free guides mailed right to your home. There is never a cost or obligation. The Discover Bible Guides are our free gift to you. Find answers in guides like A Second Chance at Life. You'll find answers to the things that matter the most to you. Visit BibleStudies.com and begin your journey today to discover answers to life's deepest questions.
I could listen to that bumper music all day. It kind of puts, you know what it reminds me of? Remember Expo 86 in Vancouver.
Yeah,
and you
I
go into
do.
these fancy high-tech displays, and there'd be laser lights
Yeah,
and
it was all techno.
and fog machines, and then they would play that techno music, and that
Yeah.
kind of reminded me like we're waiting for the big show in the GM Pavilion or whatever it was. Expo 86, that
Yeah, we
dates
just
me.
dated ourselves,
Yep,
didn't we?
I was 17.
Yeah. I was a little younger. I remember going with my parents. I must have been 15 if you were 17.
Yep.
Now everyone can do the math and they know exactly how old we are.
And somehow now you're older than I am.
Oh,
I don't know how
is
that works.
how that
but,
works?
you know, I mean, look at me.
As long as I
eight-
look younger.
I still look 17.
Yeah, you do kind of.
Kind of,
You have a baby
except I'm
face.
bearded and gray. But other than that, I
You're
look
not
17.
gray.
All right. Hey, theories. We looked at do the Falashas have the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia?
Mm-hmm.
Did the Templars take it to Scotland?
Mm-hmm. Or was it in Ireland?
Was it in Ireland because Jeremiah and a group of people got on a boat because the squiggly line said so,
Sure.
and he's buried there?
Theory number
we
4.
Well, we do know that by the 1st century, there's also this old theory that tin, well, where did they get tin? Tin came from the British Isles. The Romans were clearly there. There was trade up there and so on in later years. But theory 4 is the one we were talking about before the break. And this is the theory recorded in the books of the Maccabees. Now, the books of the Maccabees are not inspired canonical books of the Bible. They're ancient history. And I have no reason to doubt most of the history that appears in the 1st and 2nd Maccabees, those two books. It's the history of the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid kings. These were Alexander's generals. After he dies, his empire breaks up into 4 parts under his 4 generals: Ptolemy, Seleucus, Cassander, and Lysimachus. And the Seleucids sort of had Palestine, or the area that would come to be known as Palestine, under the Romans. Romans called it Palestine because it had Philistines. And that's where the name comes from. Anyway, the Jews revolt against the Seleucid kings, and here it is. Let me read to you. Not very often will you get a reading from, the apocryphal books on this show, but 2 Maccabees 2, verse 4, has the story of Jeremiah hiding the tent of the Lord's presence, or the tabernacle. These same records, it says, also tell us that Jeremiah, acting under divine guidance, commanded the tent of the Lord's presence and the covenant box. What do you think the covenant box would be?
Must be the Ark of the Covenant.
Ark of the Covenant. To
Sure.
follow him to the mountain where Moses had looked down on the land which God had promised our people. So that would be
Mount Nebo.
Mount Nebo. When Jeremiah got to the mountain, he found a huge cave, and there he hid the tent of the Lord's presence, the covenant box, and the altar of incense. So he's got 3 things: the tent itself, the Ark of the Covenant, and the altar of incense, which stood right in front of the curtain and represented the prayers of God's people going up
Sure.
before the throne of God. Then he sealed up the entrance. Some of Jeremiah's friends tried to follow him and mark the way, but they couldn't find the cave. When Jeremiah learned what they had done, he reprimanded them, saying, "No one must know about this place until God gathers his people together again and shows them mercy. At that time he will reveal where these things are hidden, and the dazzling light of his presence will be seen in the cloud, as it was in the time of Moses on the occasion when Solomon prayed the temple might be dedicated in holy splendor." The next time we know biblically, if there's any truth to that part of the story, the next time we see God appearing in the clouds is the second coming of Christ. We see him in all his
right.
glory with the glory of the Father. But I
Showing
have to say
mercy.
that part of the story is probably a legend. But the theory says that Jeremiah hid the ark. It's probably the most likely, somewhere there in the land of Israel. There are all kinds of variations on this. Other theories concern the whereabouts of the Lost Ark include a guy by Shlomo Goren. He's a rabbi, and he says it's hidden beneath the Temple Mount, not on Mount Nebo. Ron Wyatt was an amateur archaeologist he wasn't a licensed or a trained archaeologist, amateur archaeologist in the 20th century, claims that he dug under the Temple Mount and he actually saw the Ark of the Covenant, and he tells this fantastic story how it was right beneath where the cross was, and blood ran down from Jesus' cross through the crack, and one single drop landed on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, and so on. But did Jeremiah hide the Ark? Yeah. Was it at Mount Nebo? This is probably the most likely, but I have to say, at the end of all those theories, I don't
We don't know.
I don't know
don't
where
know.
the Ark is,
Sure.
but I do know
What it is.
what the Ark is.
Well, Sean, let's talk about that for a few minutes, because it is not this magical box as
No.
portrayed in the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
no,
it is
it's
not.
not. It doesn't slay Nazis.
No, it's not the stuff of movies. It is something much more significant. So
Right.
let's talk from the Bible what this ark
Right.
actually is and was.
I actually got interested in this when I was a little kid. I got my hands on a copy of Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. Not good reading. Don't give it to your children. It's not biblical. He was a nutcase. It's the nuttiest book. Well, he was probably clever like a fox. He sold a lot of books saying God was an ancient alien who came and planted the human race here, yada, yada, yada. What he claimed is that it was a two-way radio for Moses to talk to the aliens.
Right.
And that's where I first
Right.
kind of became interested in this. Like, that's why it, it had a big capacitor in it. So if you touched it, you would get electrocuted and it would kill you.
Yeah.
I don't know how you come to that theory. If you're reading the whole Bible, you can't come to that conclusion.
No.
It's not a two-way radio between Moses and the aliens. As much as that makes for good book sales, that's not the truth. The Ark of the Covenant is mentioned by several names. It's called the Ark of the Covenant or the Ark of the Testimony. Those are synonyms. The Ark of the Lord, sometimes just the Ark. What's an ark? It's a place where you keep something valuable, right? It's the same word in the Septuagint, which is the Greek Old Testament. When the Jews in Alexandria translated the Bible into Greek, they used the same word for the Ark of the Covenant as Noah's Ark, a place to keep something safe.
Okay.
Here's what we know about the Ark. It gets top billing. When it comes time to build the sanctuary, we mentioned this a moment ago, God says, start here. Make an ark of acacia wood, it says in Exodus 25. Build me a sanctuary. The next thing, build me an ark of acacia wood. You shall overlay it with pure gold, it says in Exodus 25 and verse 10. So this is interesting, it's got two natures. It's got wood
and gold.
and gold. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
Of all the articles that are in the sanctuary, the candlestick, the table of showbread, this one gets mentioned the most often. It's not only built first, but it's mentioned more than all the others. It's mentioned 185 times in the Bible. Now, what is it? This is the place where the presence of God would dwell when Israel was no longer marching, but when they pitched camp. They would pitch camp. The cloud that they were following would come down into the most holy place and take up residence above the Ark of the Covenant. There were two golden angels on the lid of that. The lid was called
Cherubim.
the mercy seat.
Mercy seat.
Right? And there were two cherubim there, and the cloud would take up residence between there, and this is the place where God would communicate with Moses. So
Right.
Eric Von Daniken gets half a point for saying it was a point of communication
point.
but it wasn't a radio,
Right.
and it wasn't aliens.
Right.
Listen to this, Exodus 25, verse 22. And there I will meet with you, God speaking to Moses, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim which are on the ark of the testimony. Those are those two angels. About everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel. So this is where God met with Moses. And the ark itself wasn't something that the Israelites designed and presented to God. God told them.
Very specifically, he gave them the pattern.
Yeah, exactly what to build.
Yes.
Everything in the tabernacle.
Yes.
In a little earlier in that chapter, when God says, tells them to build the sanctuary, Exodus 25, verse 8, let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. I love that. That means God wants to be with us. Now, we couldn't have full communion with him as sinners. The sin problem had to be solved, and the presence of God was hidden behind a veil.
Right.
But let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, according to all that I will show you. That is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of its furnishings, just so you shall make it. In other words,
Specific.
yeah, God was going to show them a blueprint, build this. It had to be built exactly right. Why? It's because the earthly sanctuary was actually a copy of something in heaven.
Right.
The book of Hebrews tells us that our real high priest isn't Aaron. Our real high priest
It's Jesus.
is Jesus, who serves in the heavenly sanctuary. Listen to this, Hebrews 8, verse 1. Now this is the main point of the things we are saying. We have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. Now remember, the presence of God was right above the ark. That was God's throne in the old sanctuary. A minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord erected and not man. Well, man built the one in the Old Testament. Jesus is now in a sanctuary that the Lord built, and it says it's the real one, the true tabernacle. Verse 4, for if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the law. And he's talking now again about earthly priests. It says they serve, in verse 5, the copy and shadow of the heavenly things. In other words, the sanctuary on earth was a copy of heavenly things. God showed a blueprint, said, build exactly this. And that blueprint was based on something that actually exists in heaven.
Which is why it needed to be specific.
Specific.
If it's a copy, it needs to follow the pattern of what exists.
Exactly. And that's because everything in that sanctuary pointed to something important, right?
Yes.
Only the high priest could see the Ark of the Covenant. He was the only one who could step into the presence of God in that Old Testament sanctuary. He went once a year.
That's right.
Nobody else could look at it. When they packed the sanctuary, it tells us there's an old legend that says the priest would walk backwards, drop a blanket over it, never lay eyes on it, because it represented something in heaven. What is it? Well, if God sits above it, it's probably the throne of God. And in fact, John, in the book of Revelation, sees an ark in heaven. Revelation 11:19, the temple of God was opened where?
In heaven.
In heaven. And the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. There's an ark of the covenant in heaven. What does it represent? The Bible says 9 times that God is the one who dwells between the cherubim.
Yes,
You find it in 1 Samuel 4, 1 Samuel 6, Psalm 99, Isaiah 37. The cherubim, Ezekiel 1 and Ezekiel 10 says, have 4 faces. And those same faces show up in Revelation 4 and 5 right at the throne of God.
Right.
The ark represents God's throne. That's why it was so sacred, so holy in the Old Testament. But now that we've moved into the New Testament, we don't need those symbolic representations anymore.
Right.
When Jesus came, he's the real Passover lamb. No need for a Passover lamb. No need for animal sacrifices. No need for the altar of sacrifice out in the courtyard, because Jesus died at the cross, which was the world's altar of sacrifice.
And the veil was torn in two.
Matthew 27, verse 52 says, or 51, the veil was torn in two at that moment.
Yep.
That's absolutely right. So Jesus then goes into heaven as our high priest. He carries his own blood in as a sacrifice for sin, and he approaches God's throne. Here's what it says in verse 4. I love this. Or Hebrews 4, verse 15. Yeah. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. Jesus lived here. He gets it. But was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. That's why he's our perfect substitute. He lived here as one of us, but never sinned. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. What did Jesus do? He opened the way for us back to God's throne. The Ark of the Covenant was pointing us forward to a greater reality with Jesus. In fact, the Ark itself points to Jesus, doesn't it? I mentioned earlier that it's got acacia wood inside, gold on the outside, something perishable surrounded by something imperishable. And what is Jesus? Fully God and fully man. He becomes one of us, such that he could die and have emotions and be hungry and lonely and tired. And yet he's fully God. There's refined gold in his character. He's both at once. The whole ark points to him. But the story is that he opens the way for us again to come boldly to the throne of grace. The Ark of the Covenant was a symbol for what God would do for us through Jesus Christ, opening the way back into paradise. Now there's no need for that veil you mentioned a moment ago, ripped in two at the crucifixion, because we're allowed straight into the presence of
God directly.
With confidence.
Communicate with him directly.
That's the Ark of the Covenant. It's not a two-way radio. It is a symbol of what Jesus does for us. We should probably do a series sometimes on everything that is in that sanctuary and how it points to Jesus. One of the most fascinating prophecies in the Old Testament, one that a lot of Christians miss because they don't read it. I hear that we're out of time. Maybe the truth is that the Ark of the Covenant is hidden here at the Voice of Prophecy.
I don't think so, hon.
No, I really do think that it's probably hidden in Israel, that Jeremiah probably hid it.
It really seems to add up historically.
I'm going with the Maccabees account. I have no reason to doubt that it's true. In the end, it doesn't really matter where it is, because we have access to the real Ark of the Covenant in heaven, the throne of God. And that happens through Jesus, who became one of us, gave his life for us, and opened up that path again. That's the music. We're out of time. And so that's it for another episode of Disclosure. Come and join us again next time right here. We'll see you again.